Live from the Business RadioX studio inside Renaissance Bank, the bank that specializes in understanding you. It's time for North Fulton Business Radio.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of North Fulton Business Radio. I'm John Ray, and excited to have you here today, folks, because Deb Page is joining us. Deb is the president of the Institute for Performance Improvement, and she's got some terrific insights to share with us today, I think. So I want to get to Deb in a second, but I want to remind you that if you need some improvement yourself in the quality of the banking relationship you have as a business, if you're at that big mega bank and you're tired of the mega bank experience, and I don't even need to explain what that is if you're at one of those banks, go to renaissancebank.com. And if you want to try them out, just go to their website, pick one of those local offices and give them a call and see if a live person answers the phone, because yes, that's what happens. And you can't get that at a lot of these bigger banks. And that's just one indication of how Renaissance does business. The clients that I refer to them say that they're big enough to handle pretty much any need you can throw at them as a bank, but they're small enough to deliver their services in a personal way. And that's a magic combination that is, I think, worth you checking out if you're discontent with your current banking situation. Go to renaissancebank.com to find out more. Renaissance Bank, understanding you, member FDIC. And again, now I want to welcome Deb Page. Deb is the president of the Institute for Performance Improvement. Deb, welcome.
Thank you. I'm a fan of yours, and I'm really glad to be able to have this experience with you.
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you so much. I am a fan of what you're doing in learning about it, and I'm excited that we can share with folks about your work. So give us a brief overview of how you're serving folks out there.
Of course, with the name, the Institute for Performance Improvement, it tells you what we're focused. Mm-hmm. But we work to grow up individuals and organizations that can manage the type of complex challenges that we're all facing today. Everybody, how many times can we say AI and the changes it's bringing and those types of things? And there's probably not a listener out there that's with a business or a nonprofit or whatever that's not dealing with people challenges and a lot of change and getting things done. And so about 15 years ago, I was studying some people who had been very successful. So we started off in K-12, looking at people who had been, they'd just been pivotal in the turnaround of persistently underperforming schools. And I reached out to my colleague, she's internationally recognized for her work in accreditation and certification of people, but always with a focus on performance. And I said, I see something special in these people. Everybody knows what the work of improvement is, but they know the how to get it done through people. So we researched that, and then we went across industries. And we came up with a set of standards, a set of practices. We developed toolkits, we developed trainings and certification where people do the work and get certified. But it was always this, I've just had this passionate, my passion and purpose is helping people and organizations reach their potential. And and these days, say you're a project manager out there, things are running, you're a manager of an organization, no matter the size, things are just crazy out there. And what we find is these organizations, these need the type of people that we can develop either from inside their organization, or maybe it's somebody, maybe their late career, or they want to boost their career to really help their organization or their team or the church, their nonprofit. We help them have the toolkit, the skills to be able to be really effective to guide teams and groups and communities in collaborative work.
Wow, a lot there I want to unpack here. But before we get to that, just talk about how you got into this work. I'm always curious about that, and just what makes you passionate about this work that you do for clients.
And John, you and I have a lot in common. If I'm standing in the grocery store line behind somebody, or I see whatever, I'll say, how did you get into your job? How did you pick it? My husband finds me very annoying because I really want to know that. Uh-huh. But I started life as a high school teacher, but I always wanted to teach adults. And I had worked since I was 14. And I had an opportunity when I was at the University of Georgia. I was working part-time, and the company let me start training people. And there was a lady named Margie who had been a single mom, and this was her first job. And I helped her become really good at that job. And I was hooked ever after. So from there, after I went from teaching, I went to working in HR and training. I ran corporate universities. I finally even ended up at Citigroup, a Fortune 50 company.
Really?
But also have a passion for Georgia, for rural things. So I'm this weird mutt that has all of this background, but I love making it where people can master their craft. And in this case, we're helping people master their craft of helping people and organizations get better. And it just lights me up when we're able to see that happen and get the results.
Yeah, I wish you could have some more enthusiasm for this.
Yeah.
Folks, you can't see Deb, but she's got sparks flying here.
I never lack passion, and it's especially for this. And sometimes it's hard to describe to people what we do and why we do it.
Right.
But it is the most frequent thing people say when they go through our training and our certification is, no matter what their background is, why have I not had this sooner?
I love the smile on your face when you talk about your work. It's really cool. What do you mean by performance? Maybe that's the one place we can start breaking this down for those that are listening. I get the sense you're not, and that's why I want to ask the question, you're not just talking about metrics per se. You're talking about something deeper and broader.
Performance is something that creates a meaningful outcome or result. And all through my career, I am certified in human performance improvement, and that recognizes that any organization, community, what you're talking, it gets done through the work of people. Even though we have AI and those nasty robots now to help us, well, maybe not nasty, but anyway, some people don't like them. But everything gets done through people, and at the end of the day, it usually is for people. And so human performance improvement is about, you have a process of how you do it. That's a pretty standard continuous improvement process, but you have values like you focus on results, you add value, you work in partnership, you take a systemic look and a systematic process. So it's helping, like recently I've been working with a nonprofit that if I call the name, people would know, just to see them move into having some processes and ways of doing things and seeing them blossom and saying, this changed our practice, I really enjoy it, and I love to coach them and see them do it too.
But this is more than process improvement. So let's make the distinction there.
Because this is, you grow it through people. And the people who are very successful in this work are people that come to us with some of those innate abilities that employers say they want today. They can hold their own with complex communication situations. They can build trust and build relationships and those types of things, because you have to gain the trust and the respect of people and credibility for them to lean in to let you guide their work, especially if you're from outside their organization or you're outside, as I was, that nonprofit or those companies I've helped. So it's about that focus on helping people and organizations be successful, and organizations are not successful unless their people are. Now, we use metrics, we use data, qualitative, quantitative, to do that. But if you don't have the people and the relationships and those things, you've done this forever, it tends to fall apart, stagnate, or not get there.
Yeah. I want to clarify to make sure those that are listening to this conversation understand. Do you work with organizations that need performance improvement? I know you certify performance improvement facilitators, or do you do both?
We do both.
Okay.
Yeah. I know how to do it really well. So if a company or a nonprofit or whatever needs me to help them, I love doing that. But at the end of the day, I'm sending them back to the same things that we train and certify people to do. Like, I'm starting to work with the second largest provider of early learning services in the country. And I'm helping them use these processes, but I'm also training their people along the way to be able to have a process for improvement, but it's very people-centric. And that they know it's been an entrepreneurial company, so it's helping them be able to make some of those transitions from going from solely entrepreneurial to having processes in place, but the people feel good about it and can do it.
I'm curious about the sources of underperformance. You talked about process, the need for processes to improve. One word you haven't mentioned yet, unless I missed it, is culture.
Yes.
Which is that the most overused word in the world right now, or what?
But we all know that a bad culture beats good performers every time.
For sure.
Saying.
Beats them down into submission. Yeah. Talk about the sources of underperformance that you most often see in the clients you work with.
I'm glad you asked that, because I'll share with you the process that we get them to understand that, because those can vary by organization.
Sure.
And when you look at the work of human performance improvement, the first thing you do is help the organization or the people of the team look at where are we now and where do we want to be. Like in this bank we're in, you can help a bank do this type of thing. Where are we now? Where do we want to be? And then we look at that gap. And sometimes it's something you need to improve. Sometimes it's an opportunity. It's potential. It's not always negative. Then we say, let's take a scan of the marketplace. Okay, we're in a bank. What are the marketplace factors that impact the ability of people within this bank and the powerful place that it has in this community to be successful? So you look at what are the things in the marketplace that are impacting the organizational performance. Then you look down at what in the workplace, and we go through and say, okay, that's where culture comes up. That is where you have everything from, are things accessible to, are they the complexity that you have of the business or the organization, or like the one I was working with, they just had their workplace was very immature, and although highly successful, they were growing to the point that some things needed to be standardized. So it's looking at that workplace. Then you look at the work that people are doing and think how that is changing today. And so it's looking at what are the factors in the work. Is it the complexity? Is it the speed of change? Is it that it's unclear? And something that's important, if you're talking about the workplace and the work, which you've been doing this long enough to know who's control of that. And that's the leaders, the managers, the supervisors. Sometimes it's in governance, those types of things. But then you get down to the will, skill, and readiness of the worker. And that has, if you look at what impacts performance, most of what research has shown that the factors in the workplace and the work are the number one things that impact people's ability to be successful. Will is, do they have the motivation to do it? Skill, do they have skills to do it? And are they ready to be able to do it? So when we help people look through that, they not only know what needs to change, but who needs to take part in changing it. And in all cases, you need the worker, the people that do the work at the table in that work, so that they are going to own it, believe in it, trust the process.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we intuitively know that, but then often we don't have the right people at the table. And even if we're trying to get the right people to the table, we can't get everybody around the table, maybe, that needs to be around the table.
Or to agree.
Yeah, certainly to agree. That's for sure. Yeah, it's like the old saying, if you get two people together, you'll get four different opinions. But how do you go into an organization and make sure that whoever is in the room, what you're trying to move them toward, gets outside the room to the rest of the organization? Does that make sense?
Yes, and that's where you're upskilling and empowering those people and getting them motivated to go back and say, okay, I'm going to take my team. Sector partnerships are a great example, where you have to have your K-12, your post-secondary, including technical college or employers, nonprofits, economic development, whatever. Everybody is coming in and saying, we need these workers to do this. This is a situation where if that person is there from industry, they have to go back into their business and say, if we're going to be able to accomplish what we need to do, this is how we have to learn to collaborate. And more than anything, you, as a successful facilitator of this, that's why we have so many good processes and tools to help people learn from each other. And we help them understand how adults and how people think and their prior knowledge and those types of things. So they really understand how, in a good way, to get into people's minds and help them sometimes examine the mental models they have to be able to look at something from a new way. Yeah. And we have tools. I'm sure you've been in a million places where this is the loudest voice in the room, or people know who the power brokers are. And we even have protocols that help minimize the challenge to that, at the same time getting to consensus. And that can be a tough thing to do, but sometimes you'll be surprised how well it works.
Folks, we're here chatting with Deb Page, and Deb is the president of the Institute for Performance Improvement. So we mentioned earlier that your organization certifies performance improvement facilitators. I love the term facilitator, because what that really implies is that you're helping individuals go out and really bring to the surface solutions that are already in the room, right?
Yes, facilitate means to cause to happen easier. And think of all the times you've been in meetings that you would think, I wish we could make this happen easier.
Yeah. I don't even want to bring back those memories, but I know what you're talking about. And you know you're not going to get there when you're in those meetings.
Yeah. And here's the thing is we have to go slow to go fast. And like every employer, we want people who can think critically. But critical thinking in a situation like this is sometimes slowing down until you get the points of view on the table with someone who can help people get to where they can come to what they do agree on so that they can get what they need. And that's the reason we look for people who have those good people skills. We've done this with school improvement for years and years with great turnaround successes. And it's in that case in a school is helping a school leader or a district leader or a school improvement team. We have a new book coming out from Solution Tree for school improvement teams and leaders. It's helping them build the teaming, the understanding within the organization and with their external stakeholders to help do things that help our students be successful to advance in career learning and life. So employers and community have what they need. But it doesn't matter if it's inside a nonprofit. I've done this within companies where you needed people to work across silos in organizations. And you needed people, that maybe HR training people, that get pulled into that. So it's really about helping them cause to happen easier. And collaboration. And I always ask people, do you know what collaboration is and how it's different from working together? Working together is you're in that room that you're talking about, talking at each other, and you're trying to get stuff done. Collaboration is working together where you set and achieve shared goals. So our work focuses on what we can agree that are our shared goals, where we each can still get what we need, but that we also are nurturing everybody that's coming in there to be better at what they do too as a facilitator.
The irony of this is that while the solution is already there within the room, it really does take an outside facilitator, agitator may be another word, that just to bring a little tension into the room, but creative tension, not something negative, but a creative tension in the room that allows those solutions to come to the fore.
Yes, it's like I was doing this a week and a half ago with a group, and I knew a little bit about some of the challenges around role clarity that they had. And when we began talking about that, you could see people just bristle. And there's always a point where that gives me pause a little bit, but then I thought that means we're making progress, because if someone you can see a change on their face or whatever, that's an opportunity to use the skills and the conversations we have and as you've been doing this for a long time, some of the people who have the most furrows in their brow sometimes end up being your best advocate for the work ahead once they see the value. And it's one of my challenges in my business is getting people just to understand why there's a value of having somebody inside or outside their organization can help them do it, because they're just used to the status quo. And it's just let us help you try this on, and you're going to be like all the rest of our clients or people that come through the program is, well, I've not had this. I've often had people, like I had a former project manager out of AT&T, and he said, this was my career capstone. I wish I'd had it while I was a project manager, because I needed the people part of it. But those project managers now that are out there, they can really, the speed at which they can do things, pull the data together, but they got to move the people along at the pace of the process too.
Yeah, that's a great point, because sometimes we get the data faster than we get the people along. In fact, the data is, as you implied, is moving even faster than it was obviously 5 years, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But the people's speed hasn't changed.
And this is about how you get people. First, you have to wrap your mind around it yourself. That's like our first standard, is what you do. And being Southerners, we probably heard the term lay low and mosey, which means if you're that consultant, you don't want to come in. The biggest mistake is they might come in and say, I can tell you how to do this. This is a solution. No, this is where the person comes in neutral, wraps their mind around it, and then they help the people in the rooms wrap their mind around it too, so they'll support the solutions. And the other big pitfall is people who jump to solutions is, if we just had this program or this initiative, this is going to be everything. And helping people use their own critical thinking in their processes that they say they want their employees to have, and how they're using that in their problem solving. And my long-term colleague, co-author, and mentor, Dr. Judith Hale, has really taught me about what research says is there's never just one solution. For each problem, there's at least 3 causes, at least 4 solutions, and you got to think about the fit and feasibility. Do you have the organizational supports, the leadership supports, the competency supports to make it happen? John, what would you guess was the number one applied performance improvement intervention around the world, the go-to? We want to fix something. What do we focus on? We have a common intervention.
I've got a couple things I could say, but
okay.
tell me what
is training and professional development.
Really?
Let's fix the
That's
people.
not what I was going to say.
Tell me what you were going to say.
It seems I'm just thinking about big organizations. One of the things that they seem to focus on is cost.
Of course, yes, absolutely. But the cost is an end game.
Yeah.
And although adjusting costs, as you love in your book,
right.
That's a whole other thing. But what are we going to do? We're going to have a new software system. We got to train everybody on it.
Right.
Or we're going to have the compliance police. And these days, often it's let's give them some content, let them sit in their cube, click through. By the way, AI can do that for you now if you need to cheat on that. And that doesn't grow capacity.
Right.
And it is stepping back and seeing, like we said in the beginning of the conversation, what are the factors and who can impact or mitigate those so that our organization is getting better on these fronts, so our people are getting better. And then there's a thing, this is from my time in HR, sometimes they're just people you need to free up their future to do something else. And so it's that human part of it. Grow them, be there for them. But sometimes I've had to fire people and they got up and hugged me and told me they loved me because I could talk to them about where they are a square peg that will fit in a square hole. And so it's very much about not just trying to develop the people or grow them. You want that people-centric piece, but it's about how the organization or the community, the sector partnership, the supply chain, how those things work together.
Yeah, I think you're right. Sometimes we need to focus on developing people for other organizations, and they get to a certain point where we've done all that we can do, that our time is done, and that they need to go grow somewhere else. And that's good for both of us.
Yes, and it's also part of this, what we help employers understand is that sometimes the hardest person to be a good coach or a good trainer is an expert. Because experts they've had years of this experience. They've honed their craft. And we commit what some people call a suicide, where if we believe that we can do it, or I'll go, this happens in education, they have a doctorate. I've worked with many people that doctorates that I've been able to guide and help to be really effective, to take that knowledge and research that they have and then apply it to their practice. And a lot of times today I see organizations that they don't take the time, or they don't see the need, or they don't have the expertise within their company to learn how do we reskill, needing now upskill, and how do we make that investment effective? And part of what we do also is, as consultants, is help them take a look at how they're training, developing, how they're evaluating people, how they're coaching. Do they have clear criteria? Do they have clear roles? So it's looking at that workplace, marketplace, worker, and helping organizations get those good processes in place. And sometimes that's a hard thing for them to hear because they're used to doing that.
Yeah, yeah. What makes for a good facilitator?
You have to be able, one, you've got to have the communication skills. You've got to have empathy. You've got to have the need not to be right and not to be the expert. That you are committed and you have the patience and are always thinking one step ahead, but you also have to be very iterative because you're working with people. Right. And so that good facilitator has all of those, sometimes what people are calling durable skills or people skills, but they also are committed to analysis and data-driven or informed decisions. They know the power of telling stories, and they are committed to everybody in the room to be successful. And I can tell you, there's never a time that I've been a facilitator that somebody doesn't go, who picked her? Why is she here? That type of thing. So even if you were chosen by the CEO, you have to be there for the IT guy and the person who's working the janitor role. So be there for everybody.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Talk about the certification program and how it works. First of all, how do I self-identify that I need to be in this program?
You're probably one of two people. You're within an organization, you see this need for the organization, and you've got those underlying, we'll call them people skills, or a need to even take those to a higher level. And you know that you could probably change your trajectory or you could add value if you convince your organization. Sometimes an organization brings in people from across their organizations. We upskill them all in this. They can have their own cohort, if you would. So those are people who have an opportunity. Sometimes it's a business leader listening to us saying, oh my gosh, we need this. And they're going to pick someone who's going to do that. And then, as I mentioned to you, you work with a lot of people that are coaches, and sometimes, like we live down at Lake Oconee, you would not believe the retired talent down there. And you've got it in this area around you here. Yeah. These people have been everything from a CEO to a successful accountant, and let us help you either go back and work in the organizations or sectors you've been in as this facilitator. Then if you need to be a subject matter expert when needed, you can, because you know the environment you're navigating. But so much with communities and nonprofits. Even I've had people that they went through my program in another sector, and now they're doing their church's strategic planning work. So it fits anywhere. And I really love it when people come through and they say, I remember a lady I worked with up in North Carolina, that how she really took it and worked in that space between the schools and the community and all of that. It's just, it works. It's simple, but everybody for the certification, they bring what they call their big rock. It's a complex challenge that they need to solve. And let's say they're outside, they're retired. We say, go find a community organization. Go back to a former employer and say, I'm wanting to do this. I'm going to apply it. So from the first day, every skill, everything they learn is immediately applied. We have a platform called Promote that's a digital asynchronous platform where they get their coaching, they get their resources. Now we are for the training, and this is project-based certification, as they're working on their big rock with the work that they're doing and applying it. We have ways that we are checking that, communicating with them. I got some really expert coaches, including Dr. Hale herself, who has 45 years of doing this. And we coach them through, help them be successful. And when they complete those core assignments, if they participate, if they help other people learn, we wanted them to show that they're having those people skills and they're developing others too as they go through. Then they obtain the certification. It's a digital badge. And they also have a portfolio that they can take with them of the project. And they are able to demonstrate they can either do this during it's 5 months. We meet 2 times a month for 2.5 hours. And then we have our asynchronous work and coaching in between. And at the end of that time, they have a portfolio, but we also tell them to reach back out to us with their story, which we love it when people do. We give them just a 4-column chart and says, what was the goal of your big rock or goals? What were the outcomes that you achieved, or where are you on that, that journey? What did you do that we helped you to do and that you did successfully? And then what did you learn and other learning that you brought to the table? And then they turn that into a success case. And it's so cool for us to publish those. You talked about telling people's story. Yep. See them to be able to tell that story for their own celebration, but sometimes for their organization and others.
Deb, let's make sure that we are clear on who needs to pick up the phone and call you. Who are the folks that need to engage with you in your work?
Often it's school districts that, of course, they know that they need for the help them with their school improvement work and that type of thing. Nonprofits, businesses, and typically a business that has grown to a point that it needs to have processes, it needs to have role clarity, it needs to have people working in teams, particularly these days when with AI and the speed of things, sometimes you're really having to change your business model or iterate. Those people, if they can get somebody either from inside their organization or they trust to go through this process to help from the outside, they can help them facilitate through those dicey waters, if you will. But I cannot think of healthcare particularly is interested in this right now. And they do a lot of this type of work in doing team-based improvement. So it really just shines in that healthcare space. And in that space right here with the changes we're having, with the change of the Department of Education, giving education back to the states are going to redefine, and counties and communities, what are we really developing our kids for? And there's a wonderful nonprofit called Battelle for Kids, and they help. Many of our listeners have probably heard of a portrait of a graduate. And that's when a community comes together with their schools and they decide, maybe with their industries, what do we need our students to be able to do? So pretty much every state in the nation is going through that right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes there are state departments of education and other entities that need that neutral facilitator that can get in there between the community. What do we want our graduates to look like? But here's what they tell me is they'll say, Deb, we can get to that portrait, but how do we get to the how of making that happen? And that's what these facilitators do.
Wow. Would love it, Deb, if you could share a success story that helps illustrate the great work you do.
Oh, gosh. I have two quick ones. One was a chamber executive that I've been working with recently. I love working with chambers of commerce. They are overworked.
They are.
Spread thin, and they serve their
good
members.
ones are overworked.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I understand that through the pandemic, we also had a lot of transition where maybe people retired out. That sometimes there are the economic development entities, but sometimes they're not. But I was working with a young lady who was just transitioning from being several years at the Chamber of Commerce in a pretty vibrant community. And she particularly wanted to get out the word about some things that their community needed to do. And so she said, I think, Deb, I'm going to do a lunch and learn, and I'm going to invite in a bunch of people, but I want some policymakers there too. So I said, let's stop and think about what you're trying to achieve, what you want the outcomes to be. And tell me about we usually have people come and do presentations. And I said, think about it, John, how many times have you been in a situation where people are just talking at and past each other and pumping out information? And so I said, I'm going to show you how to facilitate a conversation, and we're going to build the activities. And she called me back. She just lit up. She said, it was transformational. We've never made that much progress in a session. And the other one was a group that I was helping, and they work particularly in the space of helping children with disabilities. And so I trained this person up, and she was working in and among some schools and community organizations with these groups of kids. And in education, you call when you're looking at look at a dashboard model, everybody knows what red means, yellow and green. And so they had a lot of red indicators around the performance of these students. She said, Deb, I went in and I just used everything you taught me. I started getting the school leaders involved. We got community people involved. And so this is a 3-year success story. She said in that 3 years, every red indicator or yellow turned to green.
Wow.
For our toughest population. And at the same time, we were able to, for every student at that school, see positive growth because it wasn't just applied to one group. We helped them look from the marketplace, all of those things we've been talking about. And we wrote up a great success case on it.
Wonderful.
So it was just, you see it happen in organizations and businesses and everything, but I really light up when we know we're doing common.
That's fantastic. Wow. What a great conversation with Deb Page. Deb, again, she is the president of the Institute for Performance Improvement. She's also the author of the book, The Performance Improvement Facilitator Playbook. And as she mentioned, you've got several iterations of this book that are focused in on particular disciplines.
We also have the School Improvement Specialist Field Guide, and both of those are available from Amazon and from Kindle.
Terrific. Deb, before we let you go, though, great that you shared that, but how can folks find you otherwise, and how can they find out more information about the Institute for Performance Improvement.
Tell me how to do this, John, because the acronym of our organization is how people get in touch. It's Deb at, what's the way we would say, TIFPI.org.
I think you just said it.
Did it? Sometimes people like, is it a T as in Tom, I as in iceberg, F as in Frank, P as in Paul, I as in iceberg.org. So in case I have a lisp or something, that's the way, Deb at that. You can remember Deb Page because it sounds like web page.
Yes.
And my number is 706-453-6182. I live here in Georgia and work all over the nation, but I particularly would like to help some of these I'm always looking to find a community, and the one you sit in is one of those that they have so many positive assets and so much opportunity. And boy, I love to make success stories out of groups communities like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Deb Page, she is with the Institute for Performance Improvement. Deb, thanks again. Thanks for your great work. Yeah, this has been a lot of fun.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, folks, a couple of quick things before we let you go for today. If you're an expertise provider, if you sell essentially what's between your ears, if you're a coach, consultant, attorney, accountant, bookkeeper, maybe or a outsourced marketing professional, fractional executive, you know that sometimes there are mindsets that hold you back. Those mindsets are imposter syndrome and comparison, the mindset of comparison, the mindset of helping. Those are issues that can hold you back in your business, and you need a better way. And I describe that better way in a book I wrote that's just for you. It's called The Generosity Mindset, A Journey to Business Success by Raising Your Confidence, Value, and Prices. And if you're having issues with those three things, your confidence, value, and prices, then you need to go to thegenerositymindset.com and find out more about the book and also where to buy it, which is essentially where all good books are sold. Also, I just want to thank you. If you're listening to this show, I want to thank you because you have supported us and kept us the wind at our backs, as it were, for almost 9 years now. We're supporting our 9th anniversary of North Fulton Business Radio, and we've only gotten this far because of you and your support, and I'm grateful for that support. So thank you for helping us live into our mission to be the voice of business in the North Fulton region and beyond. So for my guest, Deb Page, I'm John Ray. Join us next time on North Fulton Business Radio.